George Mallory kept every friend he ever made. He believed that shared history was the same thing as love. A man you knew at 20 could never be a stranger at 60. That was his faith, and he kept it for 40 years. George was the one who always picked up the tab. The dinner ended, the bill arrived, and the table went quiet. Then George reached for it, the way he always did. Nobody thanked him anymore, because nobody expected anything else. He told himself that was what friendship looked like. A man gives, and he does not keep score. So George never kept score, but the others did. There was Daniel, who borrowed money for a sure thing in '89. The sure thing failed, and Daniel never mentioned the loan again. George never asked, because asking felt like an insult to 30 years. There was Walter, who called only when his marriage was on fire. George drove across the city at midnight more times than he could count. He sat in cold kitchens and talked Walter back from the edge. And when Walter was steady again, the calls stopped. George waited by a phone that only rang in emergencies. He mistook being needed for being loved. That is the oldest mistake a generous man can make. There was Sam, who George bailed out of a bad investment. There was Tom, whose son George quietly put through one semester of school. There was a whole table of men who knew exactly where to find George. And George knew where to find none of them, because he never had to look. They came to him. They always came to him when the well ran dry. Here is what nobody tells you about old friends. The ones who only call when they need you are not your friends. They are creditors who never intend to repay. You feel their warmth and mistake it for affection. But it is the warmth of a man standing close to your fire. The moment your fire dies, he steps back into the dark. George could not see it because his fire had burned for 40 years. He had always been the one with the warm house and the open hand. He had never once been the one who needed help. And a man who has never fallen does not know who will catch him. George owned a small printing business his father had built. For 30 years, it paid for every dinner, every loan, every favor. He thought it would always be there, the way he thought his friends would. Then the contracts moved overseas and the machines fell silent. The orders stopped, and the bank stopped being patient. At 63, George watched his father's name come off the door. He lost the business in a single brutal autumn. He lost his standing, his savings, the house his children grew up in. And for the first time in his life, George needed someone to pick up the tab. Then the day came that he needed them. He did the math and saw that he had 40 years of credit to call in. 40 years of dinners, 40 years of loans, 40 years of midnight drives. Surely one of them would answer. Surely one debt out of 100 would be repaid. So George made the calls. He called Daniel, who he had carried since '89. The phone rang 4 times and went to a recorded voice. George left a message, calm and brief, and Daniel never called back. He called Walter, who he had talked off the ledge a dozen times. Walter said he was sorry, said things were tight, said maybe next month. Next month never came. He called Sam. He called Tom. He called the whole table. Some did not pick up. Some picked up and gave him nothing but sympathy. Sympathy is what people offer when they have decided to give you nothing. George finally understood the difference between a friend and an audience. An audience claps while you stand. It files out the moment you fall. He planned one last dinner, the kind he had hosted 1,000 times. He set the table at the old restaurant, the one where he always paid. He told himself that men forget to return calls, but they show up for a face. He arrived early the way a host should. He waited. The water glasses sweated. The candle burned down. The chair across from him stayed empty. And then the next and the next. Not one of them came. The table he had paid for his entire life sat empty when he could no longer pay. And the silence answered the question he had been afraid to ask. They were never his friends. They were takers, and he had been a place to take from. Seneca warned us about this 2,000 years ago. He said, associate only with those who will make a better man of you. He said, the friend who only takes is a thief of the one life you are given, a slow thief who steals not your money, but your years. George had let a dozen slow thieves rob him for 40 years, and he had thanked them for it and reached for the bill. He sat alone at that long table and finally did the arithmetic of his life. He had given everything to men who gave nothing back. He had 100 names in his phone, and not one would answer it now. He had been the most generous man any of them ever knew. And generosity, spent on takers, is just a debt you pay to people who will never come. Here is the cruelty of it. George did not weep for the business, or the house, or the money. He wept for 40 years of a love that had only ever flowed one way. A young waiter came to clear the untouched plates. He asked George gently if his friends were running late. George looked at the empty chairs a long time. Then he told the boy the truth, because falling men lose the strength to lie. "They are not late," he said. "They were never coming. I just needed 40 years to learn the difference between a friend and a habit." He told the boy to look hard at the people around him. Not the ones who show up when you are winning, the ones who answer the phone when you have nothing left to offer. Then George paid for a dinner no one ate, one last time, and went home alone. The friend who only calls when he needs you is not slow to repay. He was never going to repay at all. Stop funding the men who vanish the day you fall. Stop answering the phone for people who only dial when the well runs dry. And the friend who only calls when he needs you? Stop waiting for the day he calls just to ask how you are. That day is not coming. Cut him off while you still have a table worth setting, because the friends worth keeping are the ones who would have filled those empty chairs. This is Schopenhauer's truth.